Hey, everybody. It's Anna Keck, and I'd love to welcome each of you to this week's episode of Ask the Doctor. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. If this is your first time, you are in for a real treat. Dr. Jeremy is absolutely amazing. He has a way of sharing those great big medical subjects in a way that common people like myself can fully understand it. If you've been here before, welcome back. I'm so glad that you came back to learn more about how our health can be one of the biggest blessings or curses. When you know what you're dealing with, you can be empowered to make the changes that can make a difference in your health. The Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. We don't want that for your future health journey. So that's why we're here, to give you the opportunity to listen and learn from the doctors. So if you have any questions as you're listening, please drop them in the chat. And at the end, if he hasn't already answered them, which 99% of the time he does, we'll get it answered then. Tonight, our big topic is brain health. And so if you had questions about it and you've been wanting to ask somebody, this is your time. So without any further ado, it is my honor to introduce to you my all-time favorite doctor, Dr. J. Take it away.
Hey guys, thanks for having me, Anna. Welcome. If you guys would drop in the chat where you're joining us from, would love to know. I know Jan's from East Texas. We have Missouri in the house with Ryan and Kylie and Anna. Would love to know Melissa. Would love to know where everybody else is joining us from. And also would love to know if who on here tonight has been touched in some way by dementia, either personally or in your family or in your parents or maybe grandparents, who has dealt with things like Alzheimer's disease. Anybody on here? That's it's something that is difficult to deal with. I lost my grandfather to Alzheimer's back when I was in high school, and I wish I would have known some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight back then. And I know we could have extended his life and could have made a difference in how he experienced all that. But it's let's see there. It's heartbreaking, really, to see somebody struggle with dementia or any neurodegenerative condition. And we're going to talk about some of the research that's out there. We're going to focus on Alzheimer's disease, but just know that this crosses over into all areas of neurodegenerative conditions. We're going to focus on Alzheimer's just because it's the most prevalent, and I think covers the most people's concerns about aging and brain health and dementia and Alzheimer's. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the statistics, which actually are kind of scary. But then we're going to come along behind that. We're going to talk about some causes. We're going to talk about some lifestyle changes that can reduce your risk dramatically. We're going to talk about brain and inflammation. And we're also going to talk about some new technology that offers a lot of hope in the area of brain health and prevention and neuroinflammation, which we're going to talk about more also. And it looks like everybody's hopping on just now. So we had a small group. Now we got a big group. So welcome, guys. Drop where you're tuning in from in the chat, and let me know how you've been impacted by Alzheimer's disease. And I'm going to try to pull up a screen so I can just share some information that way. So bear with me. I had a PowerPoint presentation put together, and then about 2.5 hours ago, lost all but about 5 slides somehow. And talk about panic mode. So I had to piece together this in about 2 hours. The rest of it that I had lost. I had about 5 slides out of the 26 I think that I had prepared. So it's not the most polished PowerPoint presentation that you'll ever see, but I'm a visual person. I like to see things and not just hear things, and so I think it's important to share some of this visually as well. Can you guys, Anna, can you see my screen? And as we go along, guys, please feel free to drop things as they come to mind, maybe questions or concerns in the chat box, and that way I can circle back around and get to those.
It looks good.
Awesome. All right. So, you know, there's a difference. We hear about dementia, we hear about Alzheimer's, right? Dementia is a general term. Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Okay. There's other forms of dementia. Alzheimer's is just the largest in that group. And so these are some scary numbers. An estimated 5.8 million Americans age 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's dementia right now. That figures out to 1 in 10 people over the age of 65. 1 in 10 is currently dealing with Alzheimer's. I knew Alzheimer's was very prevalent. I did not know we were up to 1 in 10. That was kind of shocking to me. And a lot of this has to do with the baby boom generation, right? We're having a large population that is just now getting over the age of 65. And of course, that's the biggest age that we see dementia, and the biggest age that we see Alzheimer's. So you can see here, here we are in 2020. Look how much it's risen just since 2010. 4.7 million. We're actually a little bit over this. This is 2020, but 5.8 million. By 2030, we're at 8.4. I'm going to drag your guys' pretty faces to a different part of my screen. That's the hard part when screen sharing, because you still have people on your screen and you're trying to see the background. And then we have 11 by 2040. It's projected 11.6 million in 2050, unless we make some big changes, figure some things out. 13.8 million by 2050. And look at the age ranges, right? The age 65 to 74 doesn't change a whole lot expected to through that time. But because we have the aging baby boom generation, we have a large population that's aging at the same time, right? We see that the ages 75 to 84, but look at the ages 85 plus. Is in purple right there. And so by 2030, the segment of the US population age 65 and older will increase substantially. And the projected 74 million older Americans will make up over 20% of the total population. That's up from 16% in 2020. This is lifetime risk. So lifetime risk is the probability that someone at a given age who does not have a particular condition will develop that particular condition before they die. So this is if you're 45 years old now, the chances are for men 1 in 10 that you will develop Alzheimer's disease. It's nearly 1 in 5 for women. Once we hit age 65, it goes up slightly, 11.6% for men will develop Alzheimer's, 21.1% of women will develop Alzheimer's. And this is the cost. Here in the US, total cost is projected to be $305 billion on for all individuals, Alzheimer's or other dementias. And dementias are one of the most costliest conditions to society. They believe that out-of-pocket caregivers that are caring for somebody that has Alzheimer's will spend $50,000 annually on their care. That is a lot that is spent to take care of people, and not only the dementia, but all of the health challenges that come along with that. So by the numbers, this just kind of recaps the numbers. There's 1 in 10 over 65 who has Alzheimer's right now. Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the US. 5.8 million Americans currently live with Alzheimer's. 2/3 is the number of Alzheimer's patients who are women. And this is another startling fact, is they believe that Alzheimer's disease starts 20 years before symptoms begin. 20 years before you start noticing that there are some cognitive challenges, Alzheimer's is already starting. So that's pretty alarming. So this is the cross section. If you just took a cross section of the brain and looked at it, if you just kind of took a chop right here at the ear level, right, and then looked at the brain, that's what it looks like. And this is a healthy brain here and advanced Alzheimer's here. So the cortex, which is this outer part of the brain, shrivels up, right? And this is areas involved in thinking, planning, remembering. We have shrinkage in the hippocampus, an area of the cortex that plays a role in the formation of new memories. And the ventricles are these fluid-filled spaces, like here. Can you see, Anna, can you see my pointer when I point at my screen? I'll make sure you guys can see that.
Yes.
And little dark areas right here, little bitty dark areas right there. Those are ventricles. Look how large these ventricles are in Alzheimer's disease. So we have a healthy brain, cerebral cortex, the hippocampus. Then we have in mild Alzheimer's disease, we have cortical shrinkage, moderately enlarged ventricles, and then we get into severe cortical shrinkage and severely enlarged ventricles. And so this is just brain activity visualized, normal brain, mild cognitive impairment. Just look at the red mostly, tells the story there. And this is Alzheimer's disease. And also see, look at this big black area of no activity, right? This is where a lot of those ventricles lie, in that area right there. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the causes of Alzheimer's disease. All right, we still good, Anna?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. Alzheimer's disease is also called type 3 diabetes. A lot of people don't realize this. With type 3 diabetes, the brain is literally on fire with inflammation. So research has shown that Alzheimer's disease development and progression is highly influenced by lifestyle factors. A recent study published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease confirmed earlier reports that Alzheimer's is characterized by chronic inflammation and insulin resistance in the brain. The elevated blood sugar causes formation of what they call AGEs, or advanced glycation end products. And these destroy the cell membrane function and damage insulin receptors, activating and creating a vicious cycle of elevated blood sugar and inflammatory stress. These AGEs cause massive destruction throughout the body and have an affinity for neurologic tissue. So here, type 2 diabetics with an average blood glucose of 190 has a 40% higher risk of dementia than a diabetic with an average blood glucose of just 160. So just 30 points higher, 40% higher risk of dementia. And this talks about middle-aged type 1 diabetics, rates and brain lesions, slower cognitive function than people without type 1, experiencing an episode of extremely low blood sugar. This is hypoglycemia, was associated with a twofold increase in the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So we think about, we talk about a lot of times just about high blood sugar, but a lot of times years before we have high blood sugar, we have hypoglycemia. We have episodes, kind of a roller coaster, right, of blood sugar. And that's associated as well. And I always talk about that. I think this is important that we get tested for this. You know, there are a few things that I think we need to regularly test for. And I think blood sugar problems is one of those, because it is such a silent development, right? A lot of people, one in three have pre-diabetes. That is huge. 1 in 3. So if you look on your screen of all your pretty faces and you look at the 2 people beside you, one of those 3 is likely has pre-diabetes. Let's see here. 10% of the population has diabetes. That's a huge number as well. And so I recommend that we get tested for, of course, glucose is a good thing, but more importantly, measuring your A1C. Okay, and A1C is a very easy test to have ran. Your doctor would likely gladly run that for you. There's labs all over the US. You can just literally walk in and say, hey, could you check my A1C? And so the A1C has a range because they look inside the red blood cell, and the glucose attaches on the hemoglobin molecules inside the red blood cell. The red blood cell lives about 3 months, right, before it's replaced. And so they can figure out from your A1C about an average blood sugar over about a 3-month period. And so it's not influenced as easily as your glucose is, which is just what it is that one moment in time, that can be influenced by a lot of things, right? How long it's been since you've eaten before you had your blood drawn, how you've been eating recently, the days before that, stress, sleep, a lot of things can affect your blood sugar at a single moment in time, but your A1C isn't as easily influenced. And gives you a pretty good idea of what's really going on with your blood sugar. So with your A1C of 5.7 to a 6.4 is considered pre-diabetes, right? There's some major problems already starting in a 5.7 to 6.4, which remember is estimated at 1 in 3 people. Once you hit a 6.5 or above, that's actually classified as diabetes. 6.5 and above. It's also important to measure your insulin. And another test that's great to know is your triglycerides, because actually, oftentimes your insulin and your triglycerides will tend to start to rise quite a bit sooner than your blood sugar does. And a lot of times an increased fasting insulin will be a sign of insulin resistance long before that blood sugar starts to creep up. So I hope that makes sense.
It does.
So we're going to talk about the blood-brain barrier. And this is kind of goes into why Alzheimer's is considered type 3 diabetes. And it's because this blood sugar problems, we're going to talk about other things that can impact this blood-brain barrier, which is there to protect our brain, right? This blood-brain barrier is made up of a tight network of blood vessels that's designed to only allow small nutrients to pass through. This mechanism is used to protect the brain from oxidative stress, infectious microbes, right, bacteria, and chronic inflammation. So individuals with Alzheimer's have been shown to have altered blood-brain barrier function or increased permeability. They use that term a lot in the blood-brain barrier. And here's 3 different reasons that happens. So first, we talked briefly about hypoglycemia. Low blood sugar causes a partial starvation of the brain tissue, right? Or sugar drops, the brain's like, hey, where is my food? And this is where we get hangry, right? Both hungry and angry. So has partial starvation of the brain tissue, and the body responds by opening up the blood-brain barrier, right? Because it's starving. It's like, give me anything you got. And that allows, they're trying to get more nutrients, of course, to come through there, but it also allows for more toxins and more oxidative stress to affect that brain tissue. Hyperglycemia, right? The high blood sugar causes more oxidative stress, and that damages the endothelial lining of these blood vessels, that form that blood-brain barrier, weakening the protective shield and making it more permeable to larger compounds. This causes increased stress on the brain tissue, leads to insulin resistance in the brain. Increased insulin levels are associated with these neurofibrillary tangles and amyloid plaque. You probably heard those terms used before, which are found in the brain of those suffering with Alzheimer's. Also kind of tied in along with this and actually caused by it is magnesium deficiency. So the blood sugar imbalance depletes magnesium and also other B vitamins in the body. Magnesium plays a role in the capillary tone of this endothelial membrane of these arteries in the blood-brain barrier. Magnesium deficiency weakens the endothelial lining and makes it more permeable to heavy metals such as aluminum which is classically found in the brain of Alzheimer's patients. So, low blood sugar, high blood sugar, and the resulting magnesium deficiency. So we talked, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Anna, right? We did a talk on leaky gut.
Yes.
If you haven't, if you didn't get a chance to catch that, ask whoever invited you tonight for that link, and we'll get you that link so you can check that out. But there's a lot of connections between leaky gut and leaky brain. Okay, leaky brain is just simply that increased permeability of that blood-brain barrier, right? But they're finding that oftentimes starts in the gut, and then leads up to damage in the brain itself. So this is a picture up here. We've got different stages here that I'll try to explain. I won't go into great detail. We can probably do the whole presentation on this picture alone, but this is a cross-section of the gut lining, right? So if we cut through the gut and we looked at it on its side, right here is where our food passes through, right? We have these little villi right here is where a lot of the nutrient absorption happens, right? These here are called tight junctions, where these cells come together, and this prevents things we don't want from passing through that gut lining. Let me drag everybody over here again out of the way. All right, so we have a release of zonulin that's triggered by a lot of things. So this one here talks about gliadin, right, which is in gluten. There can be a lot of other causes of that zonulin release, everything from stress to non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. There's a lot of other drugs that harm.
There we
that,
go. I was obsessed with Play-Doh, the smell and everything. And I still am, because Play-Doh is fun for kids.
All right. Play-Doh would probably also damage that intestinal lining, if the kids eat too much of it.
Exactly.
So
Sorry.
no problem. It releases zonulin, right? And this zonulin stimulates the opening of these tight junctions. See how this is tight and this is not, right? This is where these tight junctions open up, and this is where they get the term leaky gut, right? So things that shouldn't be coming from the gut are leaking through here and stirring up trouble. Also notice how these villi, we create inflammation, creates tissue damage, and look how chewed up these villi get. Of course, we start to get in areas of malnutrition, whether we're eating good or not, simply because we can't absorb we don't have any villi because they're all chewed up here. So we have the entry of zonulin, tight junction proteins, antigens, pathogens, toxins, bacterial lipopolysaccharides, and inflammatory cytokines from the intestinal lumen are able to pass through here, right? So we have tissue damage. This also creates an immune response, inflammation, immune dysfunction. This is where people struggle and develop food sensitivities because of this leaky gut. And what's on the other side of that gut lining is the bloodstream, right? So all of those things I just mentioned end up in the bloodstream, and they end up into the brain, right? So that same zonulin, which causes the release of those tight junctions in the gut, what do these cells here in this blood-brain barrier look like, right? They look a lot like the cells up here in our gut. That same zonulin increase opens up these tight junctions in the blood-brain barrier and allows all of those unfriendly particles and immune regulating antibodies and those inflammatory cytokines to come through that blood-brain barrier, creating more of an immune response, more inflammation, free radical generation, increases neurotransmitter called glutamate, but all of this together causes neuroinflammation. So this is the whole idea of all of this is we start with a leaky gut that ends up into the bloodstream. Of course, gets up to the brain, gets through the blood-brain barrier, and this is where we start to have brain inflammation, like we talked earlier, the brain on fire. So now we're going to talk about aluminum is another important factor in Alzheimer's disease. So aluminum is found in high amounts within those neurofibrillary tangles of Alzheimer's disease Regulation, which we just talked about, gut dysbiosis, right? Leaky gut, leaky brain, like we talked about, chronic inflammation, and environmental aluminum exposure. So these aluminum, we get exposed to that through a lot of industrial products. There's aluminum in vaccines. There's aluminum in deodorants. There's virtually all of the deodorants that have, what do they call it? Antiperspirant. That keeps you from sweating, right? Keeps everything dry where we apply that. Most of those are laced with aluminum. And we absorb quite a bit in areas that we might apply that deodorant. A lot of medications contain aluminum. Of course, canned foods, there's a lot of things in canned, both drinks, foods, and even tap water can contain aluminum. Aluminum has an affinity for brain tissue as well. And this was just a recent report. This was just done in April of last year. And this new data demonstrates that aluminum is co-located with phosphorylated tau protein present as tangles within neurons in the brains of early onset Alzheimer's disease. The presence of these tangles is associated with neuronal cell death, and observations of aluminum within these tangles may highlight a role for aluminum in their formation. So we've talked about some causes both with blood sugar, type 3 diabetes, insulin resistance, aluminum, leaky gut, right? Leaky gut causing leaky brain, and the importance of gut health. So then we're going to talk about some different ways that we can prevent and protect our brain from all of these evils around us, right? So these are some top inflammatory foods. This is what I teach our patients is to focus on an anti-inflammatory diet. So grass or pasture-fed meat, poultry, wild game, lemons, limes, berries, avocados, green tea, non-starchy vegetables, turmeric, wild fish, bone broth, apple cider vinegar, ginger, organic extra virgin olive oil, fermented vegetables, coconut oil, basil, oregano, thyme, rosemary, sage, etc., garlic, onions, chives. These are great anti-inflammatory foods, right? And so we have pro-inflammatory foods. Whoops. There I go trying to move things on my screen, and then I just create more problems here. So refined grains, whole grains, we talked about also how that impacts the gut lining, right? Initiating in a lot of people leaky gut. Flour products, deep fried foods, processed foods, packaged foods, grain-fed meats, eggs, fast foods, soda pop, sugar, of course, causing a lot of these foods, both grains, anything that causes a substantial rise in blood sugar and release of insulin is going to set us up for insulin resistance, of course, which will dramatically increase our risk of developing Alzheimer's. Most commercial salad dressings, due to those fake fats, right? Trans fats, margarine. I can't believe it's not butter. Now they're saying just eat your butter, right? That's the best thing you can do. Some oils such as corn, safflower, sunflower, soybean, a lot of your seed oils are detrimental to health and to the brain. So eat those healthy fats. So here's a few action steps to improve brain health. These are all things that we can do and will reduce the incidence of risk of Alzheimer's disease and just encourage brain health as we're aging. And that's one thing, I don't want to spend the last, 10, 15, 20 years of my life as an inmate in a nursing home drooling on a pillow, right? I want to live a vibrant, and I want to have a sharp brain all the way up until it's time for me to go. And a lot of these things that we talk about tonight are super important that happens and we age and our brain ages in a healthy way. So we talked about anti-inflammatory nutrition. A big part of that is just reversing blood sugar dysfunction, right? So that goes back to getting tested. I encourage all of you, if you haven't tested, or even if it's been a year or two since you've tested, that's something I would suggest getting tested at least annually and then fix it, right? Blood sugar dysfunction can always be, can't say always, nearly always can be reversed. Of course, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. That's a different story. Type 2 is lifestyle driven, and we can do things to reverse that insulin resistance and protect our brain. If we get that blood sugar under control, we're going to dramatically reduce that inflammation in the brain and protect it from developing those tangles that we talked about. Reducing stress is huge. High cortisol is very damaging to the brain. It's damaging to that gut lining. Remember that we talked about leaky gut and leaky brain. Improving sleep. Sleep is huge. So many people struggle in this area. And a lot of times it's stuff we do to ourselves, right? With either lifestyle or electronics or volume or kids or whatever reason we get out of sync with our sleep and that sleep-wake cycle. And that's when our body heals and repairs and restores, as if we get into those deeper stages of sleep. So sleep is definitely important for the brain. Reducing toxins, right? We, as much as possible, eating healthier organic foods, anti-inflammatory foods, getting more cleaner products, right? Cleaning products are known to be full of toxins and carcinogens and endocrine disrupting chemicals. Also, hygiene products and cosmetics can be loaded with toxins and even heavy metals. Plastics, everything these days is wrapped in plastic or stored in plastic. And we need to get away from that as much as possible for our health, but also for our brain. I encourage people to supplement with omega-3 fats, right? Or eating wild caught fish. Those omega-3 fats are beneficial for inflammation. Our brain is largely fat. So that's helpful to get those healthy fats in there. Intermittent fasting, there's a lot of studies showing it supporting healthy cognitive function and fasting in general. But intermittent fasting would be something like, now you shouldn't do this if you have significant blood sugar disorders, for example, but if not, intermittent fasting would be something like maybe skipping breakfast and eating maybe in a window from say noon to 6 or maybe noon to 8, and then fasting from 8, right, until noon the next day. That would be a type of intermittent fasting. And the brain during those fasting periods, and our cells in general, but those brain cells can do a lot of repair and detoxing and kind of cleaning house during those fasting periods. Another one that I recommend testing is vitamin D. Most people, if they're not actively pursuing healthy vitamin D levels, are deficient. We do a lot of labs and we find that it's super common. And optimizing vitamin D is super important for brain health, Alzheimer's prevention, but so many other things, right? Our immune system, our healthy bones and muscles, and heart health, reducing cardiovascular disease. So range suggestion for optimal vitamin D levels between 50 and 70. So that's another great blood test maybe to do on a regular basis and make sure that you're getting optimum levels of vitamin D. I find that here in Missouri, most of my patients are having to take anywhere between 5 and 10,000 IUs a day, especially during this time of year. To come anywhere close to optimum vitamin D levels. But it's important to get tested so you know how aggressively you might need to support that. And supporting a healthy gut, right? We talked about those dietary approaches to support a healthy gut. Probiotics is another great idea to support a healthy gut. And of course, if we have a healthy gut, we're more likely going to have a healthier brain. Move your body. Many studies have shown that exercise, really in any form or fashion, reduces risk of dementia. So I always encourage not only cardio type activity, whether that's just walking and whether it's jogging or riding a bike, walking on a treadmill, because I'm not going to go walk out in that snow. Any of that type of movement, and then weight training is also very good. Lifting weights, which also, of course, reduces risk of things like osteoporosis and maintaining lean muscle tissue as we age, which is also important for brain health. All right. Let's see here. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. All right. So everything we've talked about in the area of the brain and Alzheimer's disease all circles back to inflammation. Any neurodegenerative condition is due to neuroinflammation or brain inflammation. This one talks about targeting early brain inflammation may slow down Alzheimer's. There's a lot of research in this. I encourage you to either Google it, or better yet, to go on to pubmed.gov, pubmed.gov, and look at some of the research. Just type in Alzheimer's and inflammation. There's huge amounts of studies that inflammation is probably the most important factor in controlling neuroinflammation and neurodegenerative conditions. So this is just a picture of inflammation levels in the brain of a healthy young brain, a healthy elderly brain versus the inflammation in Alzheimer's. And one of my favorite tools to use in any type of neurodegenerative condition is curcumin. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the research there, and then we're going to talk a little bit about a new technology. So curcumin is unique in the fact that it actually targets a lot of these different areas that we talked about, right? The biggest one being inflammation. Curcumin is amazing at reducing inflammation. Also, curcumin improves insulin sensitivity of the cell, right? Curcumin improves blood sugar regulation in the body. Curcumin also is very beneficial at healing the gut lining, right? If we heal the gut lining and we repair the things that are going on in our gut and the microbiome, like they call it, we are going to have a healthier brain. And so this one talks about the effects of curcumin on cognition and Alzheimer's disease and healthy aging, a systematic review. This one is curcumin and Alzheimer's disease, examining the potential clinical value of curcumin in the prevention and diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. This one, I just did right before we got on today, I just did a quick search. All I typed in pubmed.gov was curcumin in Alzheimer's. And I had over 90 papers that popped up with just those two keywords. That's how much they're interested in what curcumin can do for Alzheimer's. And that didn't even get into all the other neurodegenerative and other brain conditions that we could talk about. This one kind of really, I thought, summed it up well. And this is in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. And I know a lot of this, it will be, gets a little bit deep, but just bear with me. Curcumin inhibits the formation and promotes the desegregation of amyloid plaques. It attenuates the hyperphosphorylation of the tau proteins and enhances its clearance. It binds copper, it lowers cholesterol, it modifies the microglial activity, inhibits acetylcholinesterase, it mediates the insulin signaling pathway, and it's an antioxidant. In conclusion, curcumin has a potential to be more efficacious than current treatments. Now, this isn't just current natural treatments. This is all current treatments. Curcumin has the ability. This is the caveat here that I'm wanting to talk about and how that relates to a new technology that we have available. Its usefulness as a therapeutic agent may be hindered by its low bioavailability. And so this is the hindering factor of curcumin. course, which comes from turmeric, right, is that it's not very bioavailable orally, right? So we've known for a very long time that curcumin and turmeric were special, and we've had just volumes and volumes of research to prove that's true. A lot of that was lab testing, right? A lot of those early tests were done in a lab, and they found all these exciting mechanisms and how curcumin could affect inflammation, how it can impact cancer cells, right? How it could impact, for example, the pancreas cells that secrete insulin. But the challenge was then getting those same results that they were seeing in the lab, right, in test tubes and petri dishes and all of these things, to get that to happen in a human body by giving curcumin or turmeric orally. This is where the struggle was, right? Because they found out that curcumin, which is a lipid-like substance, doesn't get into the bloodstream very easily, which is mostly water, right? Oil and water just don't mix very well. And so this has been the struggle for many years, is figuring out, we know it can do all these amazing things. How can we get it into the body? How can we get it into the bloodstream? And then how can we get it into the cells? For example, how can we get it up into the brain? And this has been a challenge. And so there's been some things that have come out over the years, things like adding black pepper extract, right? You probably heard of that. And that has increased absorption a certain amount, but it's still rapidly, curcumin is rapidly broken down, metabolized, and rapidly excreted from the body. So my challenge as a practitioner has always been, and I've used curcumin for better part of 20 plus years, is that we would have to supplement high levels of curcumin multiple times a day, because generally curcumin is cleared from the bloodstream within say 3 hours a lot of times, maybe slightly longer if it has, for example, the black pepper extract. But we were having to dose multiple times a day, right? Because our goal was to get it in the bloodstream, get it in the cells so that it could do what it was designed and we knew that it could do. And so what I'm super excited about is that there is a new technology that's out that bypasses this struggle that we've had literally for years in getting this curcumin into the body, into the bloodstream. And this is actually a German technology called BioMS. And this BioMS technology is where they have isolated the curcumin component and shrunk that down to the size of 30 nanometers. So again, I'm visual. Missouri is just show me state, right? If you take the thickness of your fingernail and you were to make 1 million slices through the thickness of your fingernail, one of those slices would be a nanometer, right? And we're talking the size of less than 30 nanometers, these particle sizes of this curcumin. And then we're taking that and to get over the problem of getting this into the bloodstream, right? Because it's an oil-like substance, is we wrap those tiny curcumin particles, we wrap those in a micelle. And the micelle is then able to carry those curcumin, those nano-sized curcumin particles into the bloodstream and ultimately into the cells. So testing has shown that this technology will increase bioavailability by 277 times over standard curcumin or turmeric preparations. So that is huge. And this is definitely a life-changing type technology. It has revolutionized my practice. And my practice is primarily chronic inflammatory conditions, autoimmune diseases, and such. And so this has been truly, I know that word is used a lot, but it has been truly a game changer with patients dealing with all sorts of inflammatory conditions. So that's a 30 nanometer size. That's the micelle around the curcumin nanoparticles right there, right? And so let's see here. This is what it looks like. It's a little dropper bottle. This is compared to native turmeric or micronized turmeric. and again, overcoming the barrier of absorption. And so this is what I'm using, not only dealing with patients that have neurodegenerative challenges, but I see this as huge in prevention, right? We talked about how a lot of times this inflammation, these changes start 20 years before the onset of symptoms. And so I don't know if you're like me, but I don't want to wait, right? And see what shows up 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I'm about prevention. And this is the most powerful anti-inflammatory that I've seen. It gets into the bloodstream in under 5 minutes. It is at a cellular level in about 15 minutes. The really cool thing about this that's different, that's also different from traditional curcumin or turmeric, is that it's in the bloodstream up to 24 hours later. It's still measurable in the bloodstream. And that's after just one dose, right? Where, remember I talked earlier, I would have to dose multiple times during the day to keep it in the bloodstream, or to attempt to. And this is just one dose is in there 24 hours later. So this is super exciting in the area of any chronic inflammation, but especially tonight we're talking about brain health and all of those areas that that inflammation is a component of. And I would just encourage you, if you haven't seen this technology, to reach back out to whoever invited you or shared this link with you, and see how this could play a part either in your current health, or maybe as a preventative agent to target that inflammation now and use it as a prevention tool. So I know I've been blabbing a long time now, and I'm going to look and see if I've got any questions. Anna, you still there?
I am. I saw somebody wanted to know what was a normal number for your triglycerides.
Yeah, triglycerides, the standard medical tests, medical range is less than 150. I'd really like to see it closer to 100 or under.
Okay.
That's a great question, Betty. Dancing is a great way to move your body. I agree, Jan. That's awesome. Diagnosed last May of type 2. Type 2 is we don't medically, a lot of times we don't talk about reversing or overcoming diabetes. I hear the term a lot, manage your blood sugar or manage your diabetes. I don't know about you, but I don't want to manage something. I want to get rid of it. And blood sugar disorders, again, especially things like type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, can be resolved most of the time. And that's what I try to help our patients do is, right, let's reverse it. Let's not just manage it. Let's get rid of it. Betty lost my mom and 2 sisters from Alzheimer's. Betty, that breaks my heart. Kayla used to work in the Alzheimer's unit. It is a heartbreaking disease. All right. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat box before we wrap up. Anna, was there anything that I missed?
No, you did. Once again, I told you guys, he never disappoints. It was another amazing teaching, breaks it down to where we, the common person, can understand it. A lot of you are like myself. We don't come from a medical background, but we do want to remind you, we do not treat, cure, or prevent anything like that. You need to get in touch with your medical doctor. And for all that advice, thank you so much for showing up. Please get back with the person who invited you here tonight. This could be the answer to the prayer you've been praying, and they would be more than happy to help you on your journey with this. And remember, this time next week, we will be addressing another medical condition, and we would love for you to come back. Bring a friend with you. It's going to be the same link, same time. Just know that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. And when you give your body what it needs, it can do amazing things to heal itself. So if this sounds like something that maybe you want to add to your regimen, reach out to that person who invited you. And once again, thank you so much for coming and joining us. Thank you, Dr. Jeremy, for this. It was amazing. Yes, Betty, we will do one on Lyme sometime soon. We kind of touched on an autoimmune one. I will send you that link. So if there's nothing else, I'll let you all go get a good night's rest, and we'll do this again next week.
See you guys.